My Uber driver this morning was a very talkative chap. He asked me why I was here. I said brand storytelling, and he asked a good question, which is, what's the difference between brand storytelling and commercials? So we had 8 minutes, whatever. I gave him the short version of the difference between brand storytelling and commercials, in my opinion. He said, well, I need to tell you I'm angry with a brand. And I said, okay. And he said his morning ritual is to watch inspirational self-help videos, motivational videos while he eats breakfast. And this morning he was particularly into the speech he was listening to. This guy was reaching him. He was leaning in, he was nodding at the screen as if the guy could see him. He really felt like this guy had connected with him. It felt different than other things that he had watched. And suddenly it stopped, and a pharmaceutical ad came on, reminding him that as a middle-aged male, if his body hadn't failed him yet, it soon would, and he should talk to a doctor. He wasn't upset so much at the interruption, although we've all experienced the frustration of the interruption. He was angry at the loss of the feeling he was experiencing when he was a part of that story. And he felt like he was a part of that story. He was experiencing the piece of content as if he were in the room listening to this guy. And just like you'd be really upset if you were listening to a performance you liked or someone you liked, and suddenly a brand ran onto the stage and cut the mics and said, I just need to talk for 30 seconds. This guy was angry at this brand. Now, it may be illogical, but that's the world we live in now. We live in a world where people expect that they will not be interrupted, and not only that there will be a continuity of the feeling that they're experiencing while they're consuming content. They can, in the words of some of the things we've looked at already, self-select, and they can choose the way they want to feel by the content that they consume. I'm going to quickly tell you 2 stories today. It's really one story with a story behind the story. The story is the one that you have seen listed in the program, perhaps. It's a story about Hope Solo, one of the greatest players to ever play soccer, top of her sport for the last 17 years. And then the partnership we engaged in with her to tell her story her way for her own reasons. I'll start with the obvious, which is that brands aren't people. People tell stories, brands don't tell stories, and brands are created for a specific purpose, and that's to add value. And you have to create an idea or a story that adds value to the company that owns the brand. You all know this, that's ABCs of branding. But it makes sense to tell stories about the brand unless telling a non-brand story ends up creating more value. And that is the tipping point we're at in this world of brand storytelling, where telling good stories about a brand is far less valuable than being a brand that enables great storytelling. And that's the clip we saw, the Guinness clip at the beginning. That was a great example of that. But telling a story as a brand, first and foremost, has to not be about the brand. The golden boomerang is that if you throw the story away from yourself, it comes back to you. But if you try to make the story about yourself, it never returns. And so, in this search for love, what do people love? What can they really find themselves buried in? What do they lean forward in? What do they share with their friends, in the words of the last panel? How can we increase shareability and increase that sense of, I have to tell someone about this? Well, it really starts, like I said, with something pure, something that I talk about a lot, and that's love. In this story, it starts here. This is young Hope Solo. When she played just for joy, when she played for fun. And I don't know if this reminds you of you at her age, or maybe it reminds you of one of your own children who plays a sport for the joy of the sport, but there is a love of the sport, of being involved in it, of running, of kicking, of scoring, that is so pure in its essence. I shoot lots of video on my phone. I watch almost none of it again. However, I watch my daughter playing soccer when I record her. There's a purity of it, and that's where this story starts. One where girls and boys are the same. They play on the same fields. They play at the same times. They have the same rules. When she was this age, she was better than most of the boys of her age. And so For her, it was an experience that was pure, it was joyful, and that led to great things. She played forward all the way through high school. It was only in college where her coach realized that her athleticism and her anticipation of what was going to happen next on the field might make her a great goalkeeper. And so she switched to goalkeeper, and the rest is history. She's won every award there is to win. She won, she was on the 2015 World Cup gold medal winning team, gold medal in the 2008 Olympics, gold medal in the 2012 Olympics. And so when we got to 2016, she hoped, the world hoped, that 2016 would be the exclamation point on a really tremendous career, a career that had taken her from college to play all over the world, to be the top athlete in her sport, to be the most recognized female athlete in her sport. And that's interesting on its own. If I was a sports documentarian, I would say, well, that's an interesting sports story, but that's not what Fullscreen does. This year we had an interesting experience where the story behind the story is we created our own streaming service and launched it, the Fullscreen streaming service, programmed original content direct to consumers for the first time. Now, we've spent years working with brands, hundreds of brands, to create thousands of pieces of branded content. And we've always preached a certain way that social storytelling is a different beast than what came before it. That all great stories have to be social at their core now. That the multi-platform thing that Wendy brought up just a second ago is real. And it's not just to promote the hero piece of content, but to extend the story, to make the story alive on all of these platforms. And so we turned to Hope, though. We liked her not because she was this was a good sports story, because she was almost singularly willing to take on the sports establishment in her sport and challenge a bunch of the status quo about how male and female athletes in her sport are treated. It became her rallying cry before the Olympics. She spoke out loudly, forcefully, and got attention in a year where there were lots of discussions about this. That women athletes on the U.S. Olympic team ought to be treated equally to the male athletes on the Olympic team. And that seems so obvious to a lot of people, but it's something she had to fight for. The pay is different, the training facilities are different, and she really had a cause and came from a place of purity still, of honesty, of I will say the truth no matter what it means to me and my career, because her legacy in her eyes is to make the soccer world for the girls who come after her better than the thing that she came up in. And so we head to the Olympics, and we had an idea of a story that might be told. But we knew more than that Hope was someone who would speak up, that she would provide an interesting story to tell no matter what happened in Rio. And the experience in Rio was going to be an interesting one. Our idea of taking interesting people and letting them tell their story directly to their fan base to bring attention to it is something that we were able to try out on our own, with our own money, to see if this could lift the Fullscreen brand. And the framework was really simple. We didn't have the cooperation of U.S. Soccer. We didn't have access to the official footage from the Olympics, and so Hope and a couple of her teammates would carry cameras. They would record straight to camera, and we would get a behind-the-scenes look unlike anything that had ever been seen in her sport. And this was an interesting framework because we can't control it. We knew going in that we wouldn't be able to shape the story as it happened. We could only hope to capture something that was interesting and special. But you embrace in that there might be magic and there might not be magic. You give up that control, you give up that so that you can do something that might be truly a difference maker. So we go into it knowing that we are not telling a story about Hope, but a story with Hope. It's her story, she's telling it. We're, as a brand, enabling the story, enabling her to do something straight to her fans, straight to the world, that's unlike anything that she's ever done before. And it turned out sometimes like we thought and hoped, and other times unlike what we thought. So let's take a look at keeping score.
A lot of people probably don't see how hard she works, how meticulous she is. She takes that element to the next level.
Best goalkeeper in the world.
Today is Thursday, I don't know, April 28th.
58 days away from the Olympics.
Have a couple interviews. Everything is focused on the inequality issues.
This is a time that we need to push for equality and we need to push for what's right.
I used to think it was negative to be called outspoken, and now I take it as a compliment.
We're willing to go as far as we need to go in order to push for women's rights.
I know that I'm on the right side of history.
Why do you think it's so hard to change?
We need a lot of everybody's help. We need the fans' help, the public pressure.
Behind you.
Thank you, thank you. I will not be leaving the hotel room in Rio.
I think at this point we're almost actually planning for Hope to get Zika.
Okay, it's our last game before we head to Rio. Hi, I just printed to my phone.
I don't know how to explain it when Jill calls to tell you if you made the team or not. It makes it official. I leave in 2 days, and I won't be back for probably 35 plus days.
We made it!
Lloyd is there, and it loops in, and Carly Lloyd has
Hope Solo had 3 nice stops. The first in Rio to get a score past U.S. goalie Hope Solo. The U.S. now steering at elimination. Sweden needs this goal.
There she scores, and the United States are out of the Olympic Games.
I think we played a bunch of cowards, but you know, the best team did not win today. I strongly, firmly believe that. I'm going home. We didn't get the job done. That's reality. This is so sad. Oh, fucking say it. 6 months suspension, no pay. Terminated contract. Effective immediately. Terminated contract. Not just a suspension. I don't have health insurance after the new year. That's how fucked up this is.
That wasn't how we thought it was going to turn out. To Hope's great credit, in my opinion, she wanted the whole story to be seen. That was obviously a moment of heartbreak for her. When I talked in the beginning about opening a framework where magic might happen, where serendipity might happen, we also created a framework where unexpected heartbreak might happen. And to her credit, she wanted the world to see her go from the top of the world to the bottom, and to see that the struggle for her as an athlete who had been at the top of her game for 17 years, her first thought was that she needed shoulder replacement surgery and had no health insurance. Now, I don't have to probably ask if any of you have ever criticized your competition. I think if we all lost our jobs and might never get another one, if we did that it would really change the way we talked about the industry. I admire Hope for still sticking with what she wanted to say. And the results for Fullscreen, while not what we thought they were going to be, were unbelievable. The framework that we created where the story could happen and the most interesting thing could happen, we ended up capturing a moment that captured the world. And for 48 hours, that clip that we showed at the end played everywhere, all over the world, with Fullscreen getting mentioned in every case. And our effort to tell a pure story, to tell a story on multiple platforms, to allow the creator to say what she wanted to say in her voice without us ever trying to make it about us, this is the golden boomerang, came back to help us more as storytellers than we ever imagined. And so I'll leave you just with that she went to the top. She allowed herself on camera to go to the bottom. She told the truth at all times. And we as a brand just tried to enable her to tell the story that she wanted to tell. And it worked for us. Thank you.